West with your whole family and enjoy class-leading fuel economy, all-wheel drive traction, and 0.9% on approved credit. The season of discovery with 0.9% financing on all new 2019 CX-9s at Flanagan Motors Mazda.
FLANAGEAN Motors.
The Montana Senior Medicare Patrol reminds seniors to never give out your personal information to an unsolicited caller. A Social Security impersonation scam is currently being reported across the state of Montana. Persons pretending to be Social Security Administration employees are making calls with the intent of stealing the victim's identity. If you suspect someone of impersonating the Social Security Administration, please call Montana Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-800-551-3191.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. And it's on to Oregon and Western Illinois for the Grizz and the Cats. And one of the Monday Night Football games last night was probably the game of the weekend in the NFL. It is Tutel Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you here on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you are having a fantastic day. Thanks for spending some time with us on your radios, on your televisions across the state of Montana, on SWX Montana Television, and on the World Wide Web as well. Check out the YouTube channel. Tutel Nuanez on YouTube. You can watch us live every single day, no matter where you are. It's a very handy thing. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, and online at kurtzpolaris.com. You can find us on the World Wide Web as well, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen to the stream. The stream's available all the time on the Listen Live tab. Streams there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you want to call us, feel free. 329-1899, area code 406. Perhaps you're familiar. 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rangitsch Brothers RV phone line. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We are going to talk the first hour about the upcoming games for the Grizz and the Cats. We talked, obviously, yesterday during the Montana Football Hour extensively about the wins for Montana and Montana State coming out of last week. We're going to start looking a little bit forward now to the matchup with the Oregon Ducks for the Grizzlies and with the Leathernecks of Western Illinois for the Montana State Bobcats. So we'll get into that. We will also hear in this first hour from Mario Cristobal, who at his press conference for the Ducks, that's the Oregon head coach, for those of you wondering who that name is, why that sounds vaguely familiar, that's why, who spoke a little bit directly about the University of Montana, their football team, and some things that he expects. And so it'll be good to hear from him, so we'll get to him as well. We will talk a little bit of NFL on this show, and we will also look around the Big Sky at large. There are, count them up, fully 40% of the teams in the top 10 of the FCS are Big Sky Conference schools, including Montana State, getting in at number 10 after that convincing win over Southeastern Missouri State. Montana at 20, so there are 5 conference teams in the top 20. Boys and girls, the Big Sky Conference, don't look now, has never had 5 teams in the postseason. I know. Pump the brakes. It's only week 2 headed into week 3, but as it stands right now, those are 5 teams that are there, and you would anticipate that. Let's put it like this. Right now, Colter, I'll save it. Montana's the only team right now that it looks like it has any risk of not making the postseason.
Well,
I mean, they're already in the top 10.
Maybe.
Okay, we'll talk about it more.
The thing you got to remember is that there will be multiple teams, and maybe every team, that loses a game that wasn't the one you thought they could or would lose. Someone will just go lose to Idaho State. Someone will lose to Northern Colorado.
All I'm saying is this. If UC Davis lost to the worst team undeniably the worst team in the Big Sky Conference, whoever that might be, that would not knock them out of the playoffs.
Totally.
None of these teams in the top 10 it would knock out of the playoffs.
We're gonna get into Jeff Choate's proclamation of why the Western Illinois game is the biggest game on Montana State's non-conference schedule. But that's the dynamic that he's talking about, because when you beat the team that you know that you had to get up for that game, you beat the other top 15 team alongside you. That's easy in certain elements. You know, you're playing under the lights, Bobcat Stadium, 20,000 people, number 12 team in the country. You're dead if you're not up for that game. It's the game after. This is the Jerome Sowers special, and I love Coach Sowers. But at Northern Arizona, Coach Sowers always figured out a way to beat one of the best teams in the league and lose to one of the worst teams in the league the very next week. And it's why NAU only made the playoffs 4 times in 22 years. They would always beat one of the teams that they weren't supposed to beat, and it never failed. Then they'd go and lose to awful teams the very next week, and it just kills the entire momentum. So I think that's what's so interesting about FCS football more than any other level of football.
Well, generally, you wouldn't think that you would be overlooking Western Illinois, though Western Illinois is a little bit down, it appears, here early on in this season. They've lost several players from last year's team that were, kind of their big players, Steve McShane and others. But when you look at your non-conference schedule in your Montana State and you go Texas Tech, Southeast Missouri, Western Illinois, that's all you need to know that you got a real deal, big-time non-conference schedule that you got to play. There isn't there probably isn't a bigger, tougher sort of non-conference schedule than what Montana State had as they transition into what is one of the easier conference schedules, likely, as we're halfway through now, the non-conference. But let's start, Coulter, with the Grizzlies versus the Oregon Ducks. Montana is going to Eugene. I think Oregon is like on quarters rather than semesters. And
I do not believe they even started school.
They are not in school till next month.
Yeah, they do 10-week quarters in Oregon, which is even Washington does quarters, but it's 12-week quarters. That sounds great.
I mean, what would it take to get the professional world to adopt the 10-week quarter system?
Interesting question. And then you get a break after each quarter is finished? Is that what you're looking for?
Boys and girls.
You already get 12 weeks of vacation every year.
ToTellForPresident2020.org. Donate now. That's all I'm saying.
What's everybody going to be doing during their quarter breaks? Siestas?
Whatever they want. It's the point. Utter autonomy with your own time. What is the reasonable expectation for the Montana Grizzlies heading to Oregon, even with the students out and all that? Okay, because of all of the games that Oregon will host this year, this will likely be the one that is the least exuberant, loud, whatever you want to call it, because for 2 reasons. Oregon is playing an FCS school, and there is no class at Oregon going on right now. And so the students, there's going to be plenty of students around, presumably go to the game, but not the way we all know how it is. The students, there's a lot of times been home games before classes commence at the University of Montana. It's a very different deal in that 2-3 section, student section, from the first game when there is no school to the second game when there is school. A very different feel. So, for whatever that's worth at the Oregon level, it's notable.
School's close enough that I think it's going to make a difference on the opposite. Because I think that games that are a couple weeks out from school, it does make a difference in the student section, lower numbers. Once you're within a week of school, people are starting to get back on campus, and maybe they come back to campus early for the game. And
have
if
no
it's
responsibility.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it's the Saturday before the Monday,
turn Coulter's mic
okay,
down.
Maybe you're minding your behavior a little bit. When you have a full week, okay, now we're talking Animal House. Now you're going hard.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I think is very interesting about this game. I was thinking about this matchup, and I had season tickets to the Washington Huskies back in 2009, I guess it was 2010, Jake Locker's senior year, and I also went to a game in Corvallis when my brother was getting recruited. He was fishing around. He had a potential walk-on offer there at Oregon State, and went to a game in Corvallis. I covered a game at the University of Utah when Montana State played there. And those 3 stadiums, I thought were impressive architectural structures with very okay environments, but nothing that compared to Washington Grizzlies Stadium.
Yeah.
Like Husky Stadium, 78,000 people, and it gets like kind of loud. It's nothing like Washington Grizzlies Stadium, truly.
No, it isn't.
And so here's what I'm getting at, though, is I think there's a perception where, man, you're going to go play in the Pac-12. I heard from so many people that went to the Texas Tech game at Montana State, when Montana State was playing down there 2 weeks ago in Lubbock, that it was nothing, that it was no noise, not loud ever, not even comparable to Bobcat Stadium, and they hold 60,000 people. So sometimes the number doesn't necessarily cater to it. And I think we get sort of blown out sometimes, too, because so often what we see on TV is Happy Valley, Penn State, the Big House, Michigan, the Horseshoe, Ohio State, Texas.
Well,
and those are very few and far between. The SEC and then some of the premier Big Ten schools and the Texas schools, with the exception, I guess, of Texas Tech, have crazy environments. But let's be honest. In the Pac-12, there's not really that crazy of environments. In Boulder, I've been to a game in Boulder. It doesn't blow your socks off. Arizona State, never been there, but it never looks crazy.
If you go to Arizona State, I mean, it's a library.
And like UCLA, USC, they might have 80,000 people there, and there's still 20,000 empty seats, and it's not really that loud. What I'm getting at is the most intense atmosphere in the Pac-12 is at Oregon.
Yes.
Certainly.
Undoubtedly.
And that's going to be one of the interesting factors of this game.
Or on the right night,
Washington State. Yeah.
But right, no, it's a very valid point, and I think I would say a lot of people have at some point been to a game in a big 60 to 70 to 80 or 90,000 person place. When it's at full throat, it hurts. It's painful to your ears, and it is unlike anything that you could ever match with anything like a 20 or 25,000 person stadium. But if there's, say, 20% empty seats, and so forth, the sound diffuses easily in those giant stadiums. I mean, you really got to have everybody on the same page going for it, to really make it work for you. And so anyway, but you're right. Oregon is, of all of the stadiums, particularly in the Pac-12, where it's still going to be a great environment, it's going to be this one. And look, a night game, Pac-12 Network, I think there's a lot to be said for it. Colter, the Ducks hammered Nevada last week, whether it was fury over the loss at Auburn, which they looked to have pretty well in hand, kind of blew it. But last week, 77-6 over Nevada. They have overs. Justin Herbert, 5 scores. Tyler Show came in. Am I saying, is that right? Show?
I think it's Show, yeah.
Show. Came in relief, 8 of 9 for 92 yards and 2 more touchdowns. The Ducks rushed for 221 yards, and they averaged, this is amazing, 8.4 yards per play. I mean, that includes incompletions and everything. 8.4 yards per play. That's remarkable. Listen, you said already to me, look, if Nevada was in the Big 12, I don't think they'd be a top half in the Big Sky, excuse me. I don't think they'd be a top half Big Sky team. So even though they're an FBS school, I don't know how much there is to take out of that. 2 questions for you. First of all, had Oregon beat Auburn, would that change the complexion of this game at all?
Well, if Oregon would have beat Auburn, I think you'd have a top 10 team. Mm-hmm. They'd be in the top 10 in the polls. They're at 15 right now, but I think they'd be in the top 10.
They would be, no doubt. No question.
Watching the Oregon-Auburn game, I thought it was striking because I think that when you have a non-conference matchup like that between a West Coast school and an SEC school, you're going to think that it's fire and ice. You're going to think it's opposites going against each other. The Pac-12 is going to have all the flashy pretty boy guys on the perimeter, and the SEC team is going to have all the hog mollies in the trenches. And that is the case for Auburn. Their D-line is incredible. I thought that their D-line was ridiculous. They have 3 first-round draft picks on their defensive line. Probably 3 of the 7 or 8 best defensive line prospects in the country are playing at Auburn right now.
Mm-hmm.
That said, it was the first time I can remember watching a Pac-12 SEC crossover game like that where it was a stalemate in the trenches. I thought Oregon's offensive line went absolutely toe-to-toe with Auburn's defensive line.
No, 100% they did.
And that's frightening if you're FCS
It's
team.
not frightening, as Bobby Hauck said. Eye-opening is what it is. It is eye-opening, to quote him directly from the Monday press conference.
Exactly. And so I think that's the thing that makes this Grizz game so interesting. Nevada plays Weber State this week, so that's going to be a good gauge to see how good and or bad Nevada is.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the unique situation of Chris Ball taking over at Northern Arizona. What's it going to be like when you have the first new coach of the 21st century at NAU? Jerome Sauer's there for 22 years. That situation is accentuated times 100 when we talk about Nevada. Chris Ault was there for 38 years. I mean, Chris Ault brought Nevada from D2 to the Big Sky to the FBS into the Mountain West. I mean, he went through every chapter of Nevada football.
Mm-hmm.
To have anybody step in and replace that guy, it's just going to take such a tall order. And I think that there's been a couple guys with Big Sky coaching ties, like Bo Baldwin, for example, that had an inside track on the Nevada job and turned it down, or didn't maybe not necessarily turned it down, but removed themselves from the search to go pursue a different opportunity. Because I think that Nevada job is a really, really, really tough job
daunting
because of who you follow. And that said, I think that there was a lot of frustration that Oregon was trying to take out. But when you look at this matchup with Montana, there's several different factors. Playing a top 15 team, period, is going to be daunting. But I think that one thing that it doesn't favor Montana. But when the last time Montana played an FBS game was at Washington. That was a nightmare of a matchup.
Yes,
because the Grizz had an average offensive line that year. They're okay. They're pretty good. Maybe above average on the Big Sky Conference level. They had 4 seniors. But UW had the best defensive line outside of Clemson and Alabama in the country. I mean, they had Vita Vea, Greg Jenkins. I mean, these guys are Danny Shelton. These guys are first-round draft picks. That's a terrible situation to be in. Now that's flipped this time around, though. I think the Grizz D-line has made progress, but Alex Goomer's a redshirt freshman. Eli Alford's a true sophomore. Braden Deming, a true sophomore. I guess a redshirt sophomore. Either way, Jesse Sims is the one kind of stalwart guy, but you're talking about, I mean, by my estimation, I think that from the center in Jake Hansen to the left guard in Shane Lemieux to the left tackle in Calvin Throckmorton, all 3 of those guys are NFL guys. Surefire. And so that's going to be such an interesting, difficult task for Montana because these guys, not only are they big, not only are they strong, not only are they athletic, but everybody talks about offensive line units. I mean, those 3 guys I just named have started 38 straight games together, not just individually, but together.
Yeah,
I mean, you talk
incredible.
about that you can't find anybody that has that sort of experience across the offensive line.
It's Tutel Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio, talking Oregon, Montana. We will be talking Montana State, Western Illinois in the next segment. But Coulter, the thing that's unique too is at the FBS level in the top 25 and the top 15, these teams are going to have great players all over the place in comparison to an FCS team. I mean, they're going to be faster, bigger, stronger. All that. Right, we get it. When it is the skill positions though that are accentuated, say, the great teams, if you take like an LSU, for instance, they're obviously going to have a great line, but LSU's DBs, right? Incredible. Their wide receivers, so good. Running backs, and et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, though, to an extent, if you scheme it up right, if you got some guys that have some confidence, you can find ways to mitigate some of that stuff through the scheme that you come up with,
right,
through the way you handle the ball, the way you run the clock, that kind of stuff. Bobby Hauck has said over and over again, up front, you either can block them or you can't. You can't hide that. And so when you're talking about Mario Cristobal, comes in as a former offensive lineman who has dedicated himself to improve, as far as being the head coach at Oregon, to improving and being dominant on the lines, and this particular season has done just that, particularly on the offensive line. There isn't as much, there's maybe a little bit, but there's certainly not as much of a scheme answer to that. There's not a lot to know about how to beat a guy to get to a quarterback. You just have to be able to do it, and if you can't do it, you can't do it. That's it. And it's going to be a very long day for the front seven of the University of Montana, which is, by the way, one of Montana's strengths is their front seven. They're very, very good. But when you go up against, like you said, a center to left side of an offensive line that is on their way to the league, it becomes a daunting task, and the weight is certainly in favor of the Oregon Ducks on that front.
And that's not to mention that Panay, I don't even know how to say his last name. His last name's Sewell. He was the number one player out of the state of Utah, which has great prep football. And they have a tremendous Polynesian population, so they have some of the great linemen in all of the western United States. He was the number one recruit out of the state of Utah and the number 4 offensive line recruit in the country. He steps in and starts at left tackle right away last year for Oregon. He's 6'6", 335, and a lot of people consider him the best offensive lineman. He's the youngest one of the group. And then, oh, by the way, the number 5 guy who no one talks about is Dallas Warmack, who played for 3 years at Alabama before he came to Oregon. He's the 5th out of 5, and he's 6'3", 315, ready to roll. Started 13 games last year. So
you think anybody from Oregon,
these guys,
or from Montana,
they're going to be a tall task for sure. And
so then here's the question.
Yeah.
What's the reasonable expectation for not even expectation? What do you want? We know what Bobby Hauck said. I asked him, what is your barometer for success in this game?
Yeah.
One word answer, very curt, winning.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. I understand why you have that mindset. I understand why you are conveying that to your team and your coaches, and fine. Like there's probably a lot of good reasons to do that. But we're sitting here. This is not even it's not close who this matchup favors. Okay, it's the Oregon Ducks, and it's the Oregon Ducks by a lot. And so the question is, from my perspective, what are the things that you want to see, that you would be looking for if you're looking at the Montana Grizzlies to go, there are positives to take, there are building blocks to take, or whatever out of this game, regardless of the final scoreboard.
I mean, we just talked all about the offensive line. We didn't even talk about the fact that they have probably the number 1 pick in next year's NFL draft playing quarterback. We didn't even talk about the 4-star recruits across the board, the 5-star recruits across the board. Here's the thing. Oregon, the rich just get richer. When an FCS school like the Cats or the Grizz land a 3-star guy, it seems like such a big deal. You go look at all these guys' recruiting bios and stuff. I mean, like Javon Holland, their number 1, their top safety, Oregon's top safety. He's the number 1 athlete in the state of California. He's the number 1 recruit in the state of California. Going to Oregon, he steps in as a true freshman. He leads the Pac-12 in picks. I mean, these guys are getting plug-and-play guys that are going to school because they have to. These guys are like NFL ready right away. And that's not just Oregon. I mean, they're obviously 15th in the country. There's guys that are in the SEC and the Big Ten that are even more talented than this. But what's the realistic expectation for Montana in this game?
Or what do you want?
Here's the thing.
What do you want to get out of this game?
Here's the thing. This is
other than a paycheck.
The matchup issue here is even more accentuated because of Oregon's strength on the offensive line, because of the fact that they have a veteran quarterback. Both of those things, plus the fact that I still think Montana's offensive line is a weakness. I thought Montana's offensive line got whipped in the trenches last week for the whole first half. They mitigated it quite a bit by throwing a lot of those outside screens in the second half. But Montana's offensive line, they have to figure out a way to keep Dalton Sneed upright. If Dalton Sneed was to get hit hard again, because you could tell he was hurting in the second half last week, you can't afford to lose him. Mm-hmm. You can't. The other thing that's a big struggle is that Montana's run game has had trouble manufacturing yards against South Dakota and North Alabama. They're going to have real trouble when they're talking about Troy Dye and company coming downhill at you. So I don't know how you burn the clock if you're Montana either. I don't know how you get out alive, by trying to keep the score down. I mean, like the Cats against Texas Tech, they weren't like running it down their throats or anything like that, but they rushed for 175 yards. I don't know how the Grizz are going to get to that point in this game. So, I mean, what's realistic? I don't know, man. I mean, the spread opened at 36.5. I take Oregon with the points all day.
No doubt. But I'm just saying in terms of like, if you want to, you go next week, come home, play Monmouth, okay?
Yeah.
The game is over with Oregon, and you go, I mean, is it just like no matter what, flush the tape? That's it? Yes. Even if you win the game, you go, outlier of a football game. You know, I don't know.
I don't know, man. I don't think there's a chance for Montana to win this game. But I mean, I'm not. You know, I guess there's a chance for anything, but I just don't really see how it feasibly happens.
102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hard left turn because this is remarkable. Bruce Bochy, manager of the San Francisco Giants. Colt, are you with me on this? Boch?
Yep.
He's been managing from 1995 till the present day in 2019.
Yep.
His current record, 1,995 wins, 2,019 losses.
Okay.
I mean, that's impossible.
I don't get what you're saying.
1995 to 2019, and that is his exact record. Exact record to the number.
It's classic.
Bruce Bochy, shout out. Riding out last month of his career as a manager right now. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Montana State at Western Illinois. Jeff Choate says this is more. I don't want to put words in Coach Choate's mouth. He insinuated, at least sort of made the allusion to this being the biggest game of their non-conference season. I'm not sure I buy it, but we'll see. We'll talk about whether that might be true or not against Western Illinois next. Hey, look up. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's satellite internet. That's right, high-speed internet delivered from a satellite right to where you live. When you're beyond the reach of cable and fiber internet, look up Eagle Satellite is our community's authorized HughesNet retailer. With HughesNet, you have the fast speeds, unlimited data with no hard data limits, and built-in Wi-Fi you need. Eagle Satellite has proudly helped our community get online for 39 years, and this year they want to help you get connected too. For a limited time, you can get free standard installation when you order HughesNet. Call Eagle Satellite, 406-728-9999, and see for yourself why HughesNet is America's #1 choice for satellite internet. That's Eagle Satellite at 406-728-9999. Eagle Satellite and HughesNet proudly connecting our community. Cats, leather next.
Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula is like your paint doctor. They take the pain out of painting. Don't trust your home to anything less than professional PPG paints from Garden City Paint and Glass. Go to visualizecolors.com. Scan in your room photo to see what color combinations will look best before painting. That's visualizecolors.com, featuring professional PPG paints. Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula, across from the Southside McDonald's at 3217 Brooks.
Alpine Touch has been part of the fabric of Montana for more than 60 years. Decades ago, Russell Street started selling his touch of magic in whitefish. Years later, Alpine Touch's all-purpose seasoning remains a favorite. It's tailgating season, and there's no better way to spice up your grill before a Grizz game than with Alpine Touch. Go to alpinetouch.com now and use the checkout code ESPN10 for a 10% discount on your order. Alpine Touch is here to keep your mouth watering all football season. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up, pump it up.
Hungry? Visit the Town Pump Deli. Big dog wraps are only $3.49. While you're there, you can pick up a 24-pack of Pabst or Rainier for only $17.99. Town Pump, they've got just what you need.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
The Montana Senior Medicare Patrol reminds seniors to never give out your personal information to an unsolicited caller. A Social Security impersonation scam is currently being reported across the state of Montana. Persons pretending to be Social Security Administration employees are making calls with the intent of stealing the victim's identity. If you suspect someone of impersonating the Social Security Administration, please call Montana Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-800-551-3191. During International Suicide Prevention Week, September 8th through 15th, River Pines Horse Sanctuary invites the public to Horses for Hope, emotional strength training as a suicide prevention strategy, a well-being journey through the way of the horse. This workshop is an opportunity to learn important suicide prevention concepts through horse grooming, an activity that is known to boost oxytocin levels in the brain, lowering blood pressure, and fostering social connection responses. A limited number of appointments are available. Call 406-304-6433 to schedule yours today.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. The Big Sky Conference landed 4 teams in the top 10 of this week's Stats FCS poll, and a pair of players from Cheddar State also earned the league's weekly honors. Eastern Washington held steady at number 4. UC Davis stayed at number 5 in this week's stats poll after posting wins over the weekend. Weber State defeated Cal Poly in a non-conference game that was between Big Sky Conference teams. They actually moved up, did Weber State, from number 7 to number 6. And Montana State cracked the top 10 at number 10 for the first time in 5 years with a 38-17 win over former number 12 Southeast Missouri State. The Montana Grizzlies moved up 2 spots to number 20 after their 61-17 win over North Alabama.
Montana State's win was spurred on by a fierce pass rush spearheaded by senior Bryce Stirk. The former Washington transfer notched 3 of Montana State's 6 sacks to earn Big Sky Co-Defensive Player of the Week honors. Montana senior Jerry Lou McGee had several crucial punt returns to set up scores before ripping off a 74-yard touchdown return to kick Montana's blowout into overdrive against North Alabama to earn Big Sky Special Teams Player of the Week honors.
Billings Central soccer standout Morgan Fierston notched her hat trick against Hamilton over the weekend, giving her the Montana prep record 102 goals in her career. She surpassed Elizabeth Pittman, who had 101.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication. People hating, say we changing, look, we made it. Yeah, we made it. That was never friendly. Yeah, now I'm jumping out of Bentley. Yeah, and I know I sound dramatic. Yeah.
Montana State is headed to Western Illinois. Montana State's 1-1. Looking to go 2-1. If they're able to get this win, they will be set up for a lot of success, it seems like, this season. And perhaps that's why this feels like a very, very big game for Montana State. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. You can find Coulter and I on Twitter at Gus Tutel. That's me, yours truly. Okay, check me out. At Skyline Sports MT, and the station is at 102.9 ESPN as well. You can follow all those things and get everything you could ever get out of Twitter. Coulter, Montana State is at Western Illinois. They come off a phenomenal win, not just a win, but a convincing win. I would call it a statement-making win over Southeast Missouri on Saturday, 38-17, as we mentioned, and just blew the doors off in the second half, 28-0 in the third quarter. They won that game after having been tied 10-10 at the break. They now go to Western Illinois, which has Western Illinois is 0-2 on this season, by the way. They lost to North Alabama, a team that the Grizzlies just routed, 26-17, so you can take of that what you will. They also lost to Colorado State, obviously FBS team, 38-13. So they're 0-2 on the season. They've lost some very, very key players from a year ago, but they're still a Missouri Valley team with a proud history as a football school, and particularly at home, Macomb, a very tough place to get to. And you would think that this is going to be both those games, by the way, road games. They went to North Alabama to play the Lions away. This will be the home opener for Western Illinois, and so it's a different animal at home, especially there, particularly because of the weirdness that it is to get there. You can't fly there and all that. So there's that aspect of this. I thought last week's game, though, for Montana State was a very, very big game. Certainly they were both big games. Here's what Jeff Choate, though, quickly had to say about this game heading into Western Illinois.
One of the things that I've told these guys really since the season started was what a big game I think this Western Illinois game is. And I think last week I think there was some talk about that SEMO game being a statement game. To me, the real statement's going to be made by how we prepare and play this week. We've not been the best road team during my tenure. We've played some very challenging opponents on the road, but that's no excuse. But this is the game, I think, that's going to define who we are as a team. How we prepare, how we play, the type of mindset that we take into this is very critical.
I don't deny anything that he just said right there.
Yep.
And to your point, and you're going to have the floor here in a moment, but to your point that you made before about if you can't get up for your home opener against a ranked opponent, you can't get up, and you got no chance. So that's the game you got to get. Then what can you do the next week when you got up and you got that big win? Can you follow it up? Can you stamp it? And sometimes that's hard to do. And as Jeff Choate alluded to, his road woes and all that. To me, though, Western Illinois is not ranked. Western Illinois is you're a favorite in this game if you're Montana State going to Western Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a favorite last week by like a score. But I thought that was a breakthrough win for Montana State last week. It's not they haven't accomplished anything yet, and no one has 2 weeks into the season. But when you talk about the arc of the Jeff Choate era and where they have been and where they have wanted to go, and you finally had a top 15 matchup at home and didn't just win but hammered that team, I thought that was a definitional win. This is a win that you certainly have to have as a kind of a prove-it game, and on the road, I do not view this game against Western Illinois as bigger than the Southeast Missouri game. I think the Southeast Missouri game was the biggest game in their non-conference schedule, and they answered all of those questions resoundingly. That doesn't mean this is not a critical game. It certainly is, but I think that game last week was a bigger game for Montana State than this game is.
You don't know what Southern or Southeast Missouri State's going to end up at the end of the year, and I'm not necessarily sure they're going to be that good. We'll see. And if they are, that's good for Montana State. But good wins and bad losses it's one of the most interesting factors in terms of the FCS playoff selection committee. And oftentimes bad losses are way more glaring than good wins. And your good win last week is almost erased if you go and lose on the road. Because this Western Illinois team, I can tell you almost definitively, isn't that good. They're not. Montana State will be a heavy favorite in this game. So you have to win the game. You have to go win the game if you're the Cats. Here's the other thing. We talk so often about Jeff Choate's proclamations. When he first took the job, he laid out the whole blueprint for what was going to happen. And some people maybe disagreed with what he was saying right out the gates because he said, hey, we're going to tear this thing down. We're going to rebuild this thing. And that means we're probably going to lose big first. And he told that to the players and the fan base. We're not going to be good year one. And we're going to be okay, but maybe not great year two. Year three, maybe we'll surprise some people. And they did last year. They made the playoffs. And now it's year 4. Hashtag win big. That's what they put on every single one of their
Coulter's
tweets.
Mic down a little bit again.
Just associated with the program. All that said, Jeff Choate thinks of everything so big picture, and I think it gives him a great advantage in very many aspects of the game. I also think that it's a little bit of a flaw. I truly think that Montana State went into Texas Tech with no intention of winning whatsoever. I think that they went in with all the intention in the world to play every single guy that they brought to Lubbock, Texas, get their feet wet, run as simple as schemes as they possibly could, show nothing on film, and then run a whole bunch of stuff that Southeast Missouri had never seen. And I also think that they thought that because of that surprise element, combined with the fact that it's a night game in Bozeman in front of a capacity crowd, that there was almost no way they were going to lose last week. I think they had full confidence that they were going to win handily in that game against SEMO, and they did. So that's why this is such a big game. That's what Choate is saying, is that you don't have 20,000 people cheering you on. You don't have the first game on a college campus in a college town with everybody abuzz for the whole week leading up to this game. You're going to Macomb, Illinois to play in front of 2,000 people in front of a team that everybody thinks you should beat by 4 touchdowns. That's more pressure to me. Mm-hmm. You got to go get it done.
More pressure and a bigger game, I think, are two different things.
Right, but that's what's great about college football is all the big games you could ever play and win are irrelevant if you lose the other ones. which makes them all the big game.
If you lose all the other ones, that's true. But what I'm saying is, what do we know? If you can get – look, UC Davis escaped by the skin of their teeth against a not very good, but San Diego team that they're clearly a better team than, and would have been a big upset and a loss. And frankly, if the call goes the other way, which it easily could, it would have been a loss. But it wasn't. And you know what happened to them? Nothing. They're the number 4 team in the nation. All I'm saying to you is that once you've established yourself as at some level, I mean, breaking into the top 10, that's significant nationally. You're a top 10 team in the country.
Right, but you also might be the most overrated team in the country.
Sure.
And if you lose this game, that affirms that. Montana State's teetering on a really slippery slope. Because, again, they have had a proclamation for 3.5 years that this year has to be the year. Therefore, you have to make it the year. You have no chance to slip up. Right now, they're ranked number 10 in the country. They have beat 2 ranked teams in Jeff Choate's tenure that aren't the Montana Grizzlies. That's it. They're 5-12 on the road. 2 of those wins are against Missoula, in Missoula. They haven't proved anything yet. They're riding out the proclamation of the vision and the talent that they have in their stables, and that's all good, but you have to prove it, and that's why this is such a huge game.
You do have to prove it, but here's the thing. Like, when they roll into Bobcat Stadium and it's Northern Arizona coming, and then they go to Cal Poly, and then they welcome Sac State, those are all huge games.
Yep.
Why? Because every game's a huge game.
Yep.
All I'm saying is I'm not arguing that this isn't a big game. It's a huge game. It's just not a bigger game to me than the Southeast Missouri State game was, because you can't prove nearly as much in this. Maybe you can to yourself. Maybe you're like, you know what? We've always been bad on the road. This is a tough place to play. It's a hard place to get to. We got to win the road games. We got to start knowing that we can win road games. Okay, I get all that. It's not a bigger game than playing the number 12 team in the nation with an opportunity to break through a glass ceiling that you've never broken through before effectively, to me. That's outside looking in. Jeff Choate knows his program far better than I do, far better than any of us. And if he says this is the game that will define us, first of all, I believe him. I think you just make it that by saying that as the head coach. I mean, he in a certain way, as a head coach, you have the power of the king. You can sit up there and just make proclamations about things about your team, and they are so in virtue of you saying that. And that also adds a lot of pressure to your guys. I don't know if I don't know if you really want to add that on there, but it's probably, if he's saying it to the public, he's probably said it to the team
100%
already anyways.
What is culture? It's a term that's thrown around in college football ad nauseum, almost to a nauseating level sometimes.
Fast food and pop music.
But what is culture? Culture is
what you are, what you
do. Where the head coach, what he sits up there and says in front of the media is also what he sits up there and says in front of his team, and every single guy in the locker room believes it. That's what culture is. It doesn't matter what the proclamation is or what the vision is. It's just all about being on the same page.
Yeah.
You have a great culture if all 95 guys are sitting there, and when you ask them a question that you just asked Coach Choate and they say what he just said, that's culture. When you have a fracturing of the locker room, when there's a million different – this is what happened to Rob Ash.
When a bunch of Miami Dolphins are trying to get out of town after the first week of football.
This is what happened to Rob Ash. Mm-hmm. Rob Ash won 70 games and won 3 Big Sky titles and made it to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. He had 1 losing season, got stomped by the Grizz and Bozeman. He's out. Well, why? Because there was 75 cooks in the kitchen. Everybody had an idea of what they should be doing, and none of the ideas were the same. You have this guy talking behind this guy's back. You could ask the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, the other co-defensive coordinator, the head coach, the same question, and you get 4 drastically different answers. And this is all on the record, so you can't even imagine what it's like, when they're back in the offices or in the locker room. And so I think that's where it is. But I just think that, again, I think this has so much to do with Jeff Choate's big picture vision. Again, I think that when he looked at his schedule, I think he thought to himself, all right, we're not going to win in Lubbock. We're almost certainly going to win on the Gold Rush. We're probably going to win our last non-conference home game against Norfolk State. What's the game we can't stub our toe in? This one.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, Again, that's true. 100% agree with it.
And also, if you would have lost last week, that's then makes this game enormous.
Right, but if they lost last week, they'd be the number 18th or 20th ranked team in the nation.
Sure.
And you wouldn't have nearly the pressure that you put on to prove whatever it is that you are now that you're going on the road. But in any case, it doesn't matter because they won the game. They won the bigger game. That's already done. They should play loose in this game, I think. But I don't know if they're going to. I will say this. I think there's been a lot more buildup about this game to that football team than there needs to have been. Like here's what I think. Okay? When you're going to a team in Western Illinois that you want to believe that you're clearly better than, don't say that it's a critical game. We got to win. This is going to define our season. You should walk in and go, we're going to pound this football team into dust.
What coach says that?
I know of one.
The one that coaches right here in Missoula,
about
Montana?
6 miles away from me right here. Right? But here's the thing. Like, first of all, I completely agree with Jeff. Their philosophies of going into Power 5 schools, utterly different.
Oh, yeah.
I think Jeff Choate has it. That's my route to go right there. Everybody's going to play. We're going to go down. We're going to see a part of the country you don't see before. We're not going to give up anything. And we're going to sit here and we're going to, make ourselves, we're going to be proud of the effort that we give, of what we do, and we are going to go in and play a football game, and then we're going to go home. And we're going to cash that check. What do you want to do in Oregon? Win. Well, okay. You're setting yourself up for failure. It's okay. I understand why you're doing it. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but I am saying that if it was Bobby Hauck going into this game right here, we are going to crush this football team.
But he wouldn't say that to anybody besides the guys in the locker room.
He wouldn't say it that way. You're right. But that would be, he certainly wouldn't say this is a season-defining football game for our club.
Well, no, he's never going to say anything like that.
Ever.
That is the most fascinating part about the dynamic that we have in Montana right now. Jeff Choate is like
Start gearing up for a commercial break.
A heavyweight boxing promoter.
Mm-hmm.
Spins the story. And he's not even the greatest I've ever been around. He is excellent at dissecting the X's and O's of football, no question. And he is teaching a class every time he gives a press conference. And it's so appealing for us in the media, but I also think it sets you up for drastic failure if it goes awry. And it can bring so much tumult to your football season so often. Bobby Hauck's the absolute other way. Yesterday, someone asked, Samari Torrey made a comment about, hey, maybe these guys overlooked me coming out of Portland, Oregon, and I didn't get any calls from the Ducks. So maybe they overlooked me a little bit. So maybe I do have something to prove, or maybe this is a bigger game for me. But I'm not really thinking about that. I just want to go compete with my teammates. He did acknowledge it, but then he backtracked into the Grizz speak that we're learning is going to be consistent. But then someone asked a follow up and said, "Do you feel like you had something to prove?" And Bobby Hauck just goes, "No."
Yeah, but
there's nothing to prove. That's the thing. You said. You're setting yourself up for failure. Failure is not in the lexicon of Montana.
Yes.
Bobby Hauck does not let anybody believe that failure is an option. That's where Montana went so awry. Because multiple coaches let failure become an option. Well, we're just not quite there yet. We got some young players. We're still learning how to win. No. When Montana won 119 games last decade because there was no option to lose.
Quick break. We'll come back. We'll stick with Montana. More specifically, we'll stick with Oregon. Mario Cristobal comments about the Grizzlies in this upcoming football game. We'll hear from the Oregon head coach next.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires. We've been helping keep folks safe on the road around here since 1952. That's why you can save up to $152 on a set of 4 select light truck and SUV tires during our fall tire sale. So swing by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Discount depends on tire size and type. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Hey everybody, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm.
Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate. Mark your calendar for the 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale. The lowest prices of the year on guns, ammunition, and accessories, and massive amounts of ammo to stock up for the entire year. September 13th and 14th in the Lolo Shopping Center parking lot on Highway 93. Tons of ammo, guns, and other items at below-cost blowout prices. September 13th and 14th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday. The 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale at the Lolo Shopping Center, Highway 93.
More than 60 years ago, R.J. Rangich opened up Rangich Brothers with one thing in mind: quality and family tradition. Those family traditions continue today and live through our family, staff, and those who buy our RVs. So whether your travels include the shores of Flathead, Glacier Peaks, Yellowstone geysers, or the hidden gems in between, jump into Jayco and experience the best freedom you and your family will ever know. Only where a handshake means something. Rangich Brothers RV Center.
The biggest reason fall is the Desperados' favorite season of all, the return of those wonderfully spirited UM students, of course. Okay. So football is the real reason the Desperado gets pumped about fall, but you can't have college ball without college, right? So this season, the Desperado is bringing the best of both worlds together with live broadcast of Montana college football and all your favorite college football teams, along with Missoula's best hot wings and coldest beer. Fall has arrived, and there's more than one reason to celebrate at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Are you interested in putting solar panels on your roof? Do you want the latest on Montana's renewable energy policies? The Montana Renewable Energy Association is a leading voice for renewable energy education and advocacy in Montana. From community-based clean energy events to advocating at the Montana legislature, they work to ensure Montana's future is powered by the sun, wind, and earth. Find out more about MREA and join as a member by visiting montanarenewables.org or calling 406-214-9405.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Welcome back. Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you are having a wonderful day. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you want to listen live, you can do it on our website, 1029espn.com. There you can listen to the stream. The stream is available on the Listen Live tab, and it is there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. We are going to hear in just a moment from the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, Mario Cristobal, in his weekly press conference talking about their matchup with the Montana Grizzlies. I want to briefly remind everybody, we talked about it yesterday, but Kay Flay going to be at the Wilma Saturday. Big show at the Wilma Saturday night. Tickets are available at logjampresents.com and the Wilma box office. And if you don't know who she is, well, got great news for you. Our good buddy Tommy Evans going to be previewing some Kay Flay on the new show on the Trail at 6 o'clock. So as soon as you're done with us here, flip it over to 103.3 on the Trail, listen to Kay Flay, get some stories, and learn about her as an artist as she is coming to Missoula on Saturday evening. Coulter, we're going to hear from Mario Cristobal here in just a moment. We'll track down the soundbite here if we can. But he talked a couple of things, both about the Grizz offensively and defensively, but also about Oregon and what they expect to do. But this is a guy who comes in and is he's a different guy than the last three that they've had, which were kind of the program defining. Obviously you have Chip Kelly coming in and really takes Oregon to a whole new level, and he's the savant, and he's this, that, and he's that. Then Mark Helfrich, and it kind of goes really well, and then it goes really poorly, and he's let go. Willie Taggart comes in for not even a full season, and now Mario Cristobal, and he's a completely different guy than those other three, both in terms of who he is and in terms of the type of football that he wants to play. And all I know is if you mix the speed and athleticism that has been the sort of hallmark of Oregon football with a big, bad, nasty top 10 in the country offensive and defensive line, you got something special, and they may be right in that area right now this season with this football team.
I do think that there's a little bit of a misperception of what Chip Kelly was. Chip Kelly, he made one of the boldest schematic decisions that changed the face of college football forever when he decided to run the triple option out of the spread with a brand new fold. The vaunted Oregon spread option, Chip Kelly decided to not block the guy in the middle. That was unheard of. Who thought of that? Who would ever even consider that? And then it made it so that the guy that is isolated, that has to make a play on, whether it's Dennis Dixon or Marcus Mariota or LaMichael James or all these, Kenyon Barner, guys that are the fastest players in college football. Now you have the nose tackles trying to make the play on this guy, and you have a two-player advantage as soon as he breaks the deal. And that broke open the whole thing. But I think that people thought of Chip Kelly as this high-flying offense when in reality, Oregon's run game was the thing that got him to the national championship game. Oregon's run game was the thing that got him into the college football playoff. Now, though, they have a way more I shouldn't say traditional because they still run a lot out of the spread. They're going to run as many multiple tight end sets. That's one thing Oregon's so creative with, too, is the back and forths. So we will see how the identity of the Ducks continue to evolve under Mario Cristobal, but Oregon's been able to run the ball for a long time. Now they just have a guy that wants to do it early and often.
Here's Mario Cristobal, the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. This is his comment initially about the Montana Grizzly offense.
That being said, I'll focus this on Montana. Couple things on them which I think are really important to note. Number one, just starting with their offense, think that their quarterback is really a special player. He's a runner, he's a thrower. He's the heart and soul of their team, very tough. He'll throw his body around. There's no hesitation in his game whatsoever. The ball's out quick and it's accurate. I think he's a special player. He's complemented by some really special wide receivers. In fact, their slot, I think, has the opportunity to break the all-time receptions record this season. He's on pace to do so, but very explosive at the slot position and very long, athletic, and fast outside. And they do a great job just mixing up what they do from a tempo standpoint. They'll get 11 personnel and run some spread tempo stuff, and then jump into 21, 22 personnel, do some more pro-style concepts both in the run game, the pass game, play action as well, and do a lot of shifts and motions, try to get you off of your scheme and try to catch you one or two gaps short and try to expose you defensively. Their offensive line, I love watching them play because they play with toughness. I believe overall they have 10 starters back, but 13 guys on their offense have started at least a game or two for them the previous season. I don't think their tight ends get enough credit. I know Colin Bingham, just watching him, 88, watched him a lot just because he's so physical and he sets the point whether they're running power, outside zone, inside zone. And they use 2 and 3 tight ends at a time. So that's a little bit on their offense, but obviously real explosive offense. They've scored a lot of points.
Is it weird that we learn more about the Grizzlies from Mario Cristobal than from Bobby Hauck? I just find that fascinating. Here he is talking about the Grizz defense.
Defensively, a very different challenge that we've had. I know it's we faced a 3-down front this past week. This one's a little bit different. They're in that 3-down front probably 70% of the time, and then 30% of the time they're in a 4-down front. They play with three safety. I'm sorry, with three. Yeah, they have a couple three safeties at a time in the game to complement their 2 corners. So 5 DBs at a time with 3 down linemen and 3 linebackers. One of those linebackers will move up on the line of scrimmage to present their 4-down package as well. But it all starts with number 33, Dante Olson. Just a hard-nosed, tough, physical, fast, instinctive football player. manning up the middle of that defense right there. And you're looking at getting some type of stunt up front, whether it be a TE, an EN, meaning truly the end and the nose stunting on first and second down, not third down, on first and second down to present a lot of fit issues for the offense, blocking scheme issues. They communicate extremely well. Thought their back, the back end of their defense does a really good job communicating and passing off concepts, matching concepts as well. And just a very different scheme than what we face, so we've got to have a great week of preparation.
So there you go. Mario Cristobal, the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, talking about the Grizzly offense and defense. Obviously, you can hear that he's a lineman, a former lineman, because he's talking about gap fits and stunts and all that kind of stuff up front, what's going on. He keys in on Dante Olson, on Dalton Sneed, and then on Colin Bigham, interestingly, another guy who he mentioned by name. But it is, to hear him break it down, when you sit there and you watch a Grizz game, even when you watch it back, you're not watching it very, very likely through the lens of a coach who's in game preparation mode and taking a look at tendencies, taking a look at percentages and the number of times that they line up in, 3-down linemen, walk up that linebacker, become a four-down set. That stuff is good to know. Like, it's nice to hear kind of some of that stuff and look at what Montana likes to do, and even offensively, the different personnel when they go 21, 22 personnel and have different pro style sets that they're running too. The fact that it's unique, that it's different from most of what it is that Oregon sees, I find interesting, because I think college football in particular has become fairly diverse in the types and styles that coaches want to run and the personnel they have and inventing ways to do new and different things. And so to be demarcated as different from the norm is actually quite a thing. And I think Montana, I haven't been able to put my finger on this yet, but to have questions at offensive line, to have questions at running back, and yet to still go out and rush for 150 to 200 to 240 yards in a game, there's some scheme stuff going on that is a little more nuanced than I think than what the common fan and even the hardcore fan can appreciate. And I think that's something that you start to tease out a little bit when you hear opposing coaches talk about the scout that they are trying to come up with for the Grizzlies, even when it's in a broad sense of, kind of what they do as a matter of percentage alignments and things of that nature.
I mean, I've watched a lot of football.
A lot.
And I can dissect things decently well. And I still couldn't, with confidence, tell you exactly what Montana runs on defense. I can tell you some tendencies, but I could not tell you exactly. Their blitzes are incredibly exotic. They bring their inside linebackers in so many different ways. They bring them up the zero gap. They bring them up the right inside the guards, outside the guards. Sometimes they do twists. They'll run all this line action like Mario Cristobal was talking about, and then a twist in front of, then a delayed blitzing linebacker. I think it's why teams struggle so much with Montana early. And if you have an elite quarterback like UC Davis did last year with Jake Mayer, sometimes they can just dissect you and just completely shred you late. Because, as we know, I mean, like watching Monday Night Football last night, which we're going to get into in the next segment, the Texans kept blitzing Drew Brees. What does Drew Brees do? He sees the blitz and he throws right to the spot where the blitz is coming from, and you just kills you. And like the announcers were saying, the elite guys like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, they say, blitz me, bring it on. But I do think that Montana also flusters opponents so much because of the 5 DB look and Josh Sandry's versatility, the way he can shift around. Now that Gavin Robertson's picking it up too, now you can shield those guys, and those guys can play different spots. And I think that's what is confusing for opposing offenses. And I think it is, like you said, it's a compliment to Kent Baer and his creativity. Hearing Oregon's head coach talk about just the difficulty in preparing schematically for what the Grizzlies offer defensively.
One last thing from Mario Cristobal before we finish up this hour. What about Oregon? What are they going to do? Not focusing so much on Montana. What's Oregon up to?
Well, our focus is on playing them the best we can. To me, it's anytime any game comes around, that's the only focus. We haven't discussed, hey, I think you know how it is. It's respect everybody that you play, and we got ourselves a heck of a ball club coming in.
So there you go. I mean, it's the only way to do it. You got to get out there and go, let's go to work and see what happens. So it is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hour 1 in the books. Hour 2 forthcoming. Speaking of Drew Brees, he's pretty good. Houston, they will never win a game in which they have a lead late. It's just not allowed.
Fall is here, and with Chris Mornings, there is no better way to start your day with a delicious drink from Florence Coffee. With flavors like indulgent white chocolate, decadent Madagascar vanilla, and rich dark chocolate, Flowco is sure to start your day off right wherever you're heading. We look forward to serving you and visit FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of The Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at The Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to BorgenProject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
The Montana Senior Medicare Patrol reminds seniors to never give out your personal information to an unsolicited caller. A Social Security impersonation scam is currently being reported across the state of Montana. Persons pretending to be Social Security Administration employees are making calls with the intent of stealing the victim's identity. If you suspect someone of impersonating the Social Security Administration, please call Montana Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-800-551-3191.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
The Big Sky Conference landed 4 teams in this week's top 10 of the Stats FCS Top 25 poll, and a pair of players from the Treasure State earned their weekly awards from the league. Here's a little Sports Center for you, Tutel Nuanez style. Eastern Washington held steady at number 4. UC Davis stayed at number 5 in this week's poll after posting wins over the weekend. Weber State defeated Cal Poly in a non-conference game that was between 2 Big Sky Conference teams. The Wildcats move up from number 7 to number 6. Montana State cracked the top 10 at number 10 for the first time in 5 years with a 38-17 win over former number 12 Southeast Missouri State. The Montana Grizzlies moved up 2 spots to number 20 after their 61-17 demolition of North Alabama.
Montana State's win was spurred on by a fierce pass rush spearheaded by senior defensive end Bryce Stirk. The former Washington transfer notched 3 of MSU's 6 sacks to earn Big Sky Defensive Player of the Week honors. Montana senior Jerry Lou McGee, he had several crucial punt returns that set up scores before ripping off a 74-yard touchdown return of his own to spark UM's blowout into overdrive on the way to earning Big Sky Conference Special Teams Player of the Week.
Billings Central soccer standout Morgan Fairstad notched a hat trick against Hamilton over the weekend, giving her a Montana Prep record 122 goals in her career. She passed Elizabeth Pittman, who had 101.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fort Law.
Monday Night Football was great, and then it wasn't. OBJ wants to wear a $190,000 watch while he's playing football. Still think Alvin Kamara's got him, though. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the first hour, you can listen on the podcast. The podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify, all of those places. The podcast is presented by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. If you want to call, 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangage Brothers RV phone line. Coulter, the New Orleans Texans game was an instant classic, if I may say so. Absolute stunner, back and forth, up and down the field. And when two throws down the field for Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans to go score, you sat there and just went, no chance they're winning this football game. I mean, how many times have we seen Houston get a late lead, like in the last 2 minutes of a ball game, and not be able to figure it out defensively and hold on to that lead? And once again it happened, and give Drew Brees all the credit in the world, and Sean Payton and all that, and Will Lutz too. Was it 58 yards that he banged it in from?
58 yards.
I mean, come on, Will Lutz. Let's go. But 6 seconds left. One timeout, but only 6 seconds, and you're playing soft coverage in the middle of the field. Like, I mean, you're giving 10 yards so that you even have an opportunity for it on a long throw. I mean, the game's over, right? It's over. You can't catch it and get down and get the timeout if it's over. Certainly, it's over 20 yards in the air.
And when he caught it and fell down, if they wouldn't have touched him, the clock would have run out too, right?
Well,
on the very final completion,
you give yourself
I guess
up.
As soon as you get the timeout,
you can give yourself up, right? And then you're down as a matter of choice, which is always an option. You know, you slide down and stuff. So I think that is okay. But they got it done, and I think there was 2 seconds left on the clock. But a heck of a kick and a great win, and one that New Orleans, they struggled. I thought Houston played a good football game. I'm reminded once again, though, man. I think sometimes everybody thinks Deshaun Watson's a really good quarterback, but I feel like sometimes you think, okay, but is he really that good? Like, is he as good as he's played? Like, somehow he's not going to – and he is just that good. Like, he's just amazing, man. I love watching Deshaun Watson play football, and yet the Houston Texans are cursed. They are cursed.
Are they cursed, or are they just poorly coached?
Well, there could be both.
You make your own luck.
You do. And I don't know –
especially when your bad luck is a trend.
Yep. I'm with you. By the way, and a huge, I think, an important first week win for New Orleans, by the way, in what they're getting off to. Now, the more important thing, how big is that? Did you see the necklace that Alvin Kamara is wearing? I mean, that thing, the chain on it is standard, but he's got a car tire sized piece of metal and diamonds and so hanging from that thing, and I'm just like, how fast could you be if you just leave it in the locker room? You know, this is how you know you don't trust your teammates. You go buy something like that, you're like, no. I am not even so much as leaving it here. I'm taking it out there with me.
Oh, that's a grandioso extrapolation, but I've never gotten the necklace thing when it comes to football. It just seems like if that was to get caught up, you just get your neck sliced.
Well, I think
what happens if he gets horse collared in the hole?
No. I think that's going to break. The necklace is going to break. The thing that I'm wondering about is when that thing's down right here and it's on your sternum, and you take one to the chest. I mean, that thing is embedded. It seems to me.
Yeah,
that's the one that I'm worried about.
Yeah,
and I don't understand it anyways. Like even in baseball, like Javier Baez. Now, who's going to argue with Javi? He's the best shortstop in the game, but how you're able to maintain your focus and concentration when you got loose hanging jewelry swinging around while you're trying to make a play, I don't understand. And why you're, I mean, you know, maybe it's the old Deion Sanders, you look good, you play good, and you're, you know, Kamara's got the double nose ring going, maybe even triple.
He's got a lot of stuff.
He got, and I'm into it. I mean, he's something else too, huh? I mean, to watch. Buddy. He is not slow.
Are you a Madden guy?
No.
Did you ever play Madden?
Yeah, I mean, I played a little bit of Madden. It's too much for me.
I mean, the rudimentary nature of the schemes originally have then evolved to them being so similar to so many things that are run in the NFL. But there's some plays in Madden that are just unstoppable. And we talk about this all the time. There's this certain element of stubbornness with coaches where they're so dead set on here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to be defined as. Here's what we need to establish. All these different platitudes. And so often, I think that teams just – why is Bill Belichick so great? Because Bill Belichick has no system. He has no tendency. The whole system is to evolve every week. The whole system is to install what's going to hurt the opponent every week. The whole system is to be ahead of the other team, to put the guys on your team in a position to succeed at all costs across the board. And when the Saints run the trips to the left and Alvin Kamara is lined up to Drew Brees on the right and they run that halfback angle to the middle of the field, I mean, dude, you could run that play over and over and over again. If you get the right matchup, you're completing that pass 100% of the time. Because Alvin Kamara is such a sweet route runner. If he runs that halfback angle in the middle of the field, there's no linebacker in the league that can touch him. They can't cover him. So I just always wonder, if you have a play like that, why wouldn't you just run it over and over and over again? And if they do figure out a way to take it away, that means they're sacrificing something else, and then you can get them there too. It's just like the zone read in college football. There's so many teams that run it over and over and over again. Why wouldn't you? Because if you're making the team make the read and you make the right read, you're going to gain yards almost every time. But Kamara's spectacular. He is one of the fun breakout stories in the league because he was largely anonymous before he got to New Orleans.
Totally.
And now he is. I mean, now he's got commercials.
It's easy to be anonymous playing at Tennessee now.
I mean, none of these big-time running backs have national ad campaigns besides Saquon Barkley, right? And Alvin Kamara has multiple national commercials now. I mean, he's on the TV all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bona fide star. It's a great story, I think, and I think he's really, really, really fun to watch, and he's the perfect weapon for Drew Brees.
The Denver Broncos, a major disappointment last night. I went over, I watched this at my folks' place, and Dad, big Broncos fan, sat down with him, excited for the game, and it was just stunk. And 24-16 looks like a one-score game. It wasn't a one-score game. I mean, Denver, it was 24-9 after 3 field goals late in this game. And they scored a late touchdown, and ultimately, the Raiders got the ball back, picked up a couple first downs, and just, that was it. I was very impressed by Oakland, particularly offensively. I mean, this is vaunted Denver defense, and Vic Fangio's this defensive guy, and I have lauded this Vic Fangio hire multiple times. But to have a defense go in against this Oakland Raider offense and not register a sack, not register a takeaway, give up 24 points, which isn't a ton of points, but basically be pounded into submission. And, Josh Jacobs, who was great in this game, and I love this kid, man, watching him play. He's phenomenal. But, I mean, you got Bradley Chubb, Derek Wolfe, Von Miller, and this is the best that you're able to do. That is very disappointing from this Denver Broncos defense. And then offensively, the Broncos were not going to be a great offensive team this season, but the Raiders aren't particularly exciting defensively themselves. I mean, they got a couple of rookies, Cleveland Farrell, and then I forget their safety who they've got for another one of their 3 first-round picks.
Abrams,
but is it Abrams? Josh Abrams?
Jonathan Abrams.
Okay, yeah. Who's the real deal? But nonetheless, this defense was a sieve last year, and all of a sudden, you can't score your first touchdown until 3 minutes left in the game, whatever it was. Very disappointing for the Denver Broncos last night in the game that, if you open up in a division game on the road against a team in your division that isn't the Chiefs or the Chargers, it's a huge game for you. And Oakland got the better of Denver last night. I think that was not a good foundation on which to build your season going forward for Denver.
I mean, there's week 1 overreactions, and then there's week 1 affirmations. And I thought the Broncos looked terrible last night.
Looked terrible. Terrible.
I mean, Joe Flacco didn't look good.
Dropping touch. Even when he looked good, his receivers weren't there for him.
Nothing really looked good. I thought Deshaun Hamilton and Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders were all lackluster. I think Phillip Lindsay's going to come back down to earth. I think that
actually that's the one. I thought Phillip Lindsay looked pretty good in a lot of ways
pretty good.
last night.
He looked pretty good.
But
I thought the Raiders came ready to play, no doubt. And they shot out the gates, 14-0. And then you could tell they were kind of hanging on for dear life to try to finish that thing out. The Broncos weren't playing well, but they, in typical NFL fashion, they still managed to make it a 1-score game somehow just by piecing it together. And I thought the Raiders looked like a team that haven't won at a high level in a couple of years in terms of them trying to close that thing out. They didn't close it out with authority, but nonetheless, there was a big win. To be sure, and that's a rivalry game. I mean, you talk about
huge.
I mean, you talk about the bad blood between those two teams in Oakland. One thing that has just driven me crazy about the evolution of professional sports and how expensive they've become to attend is so often when you see NBA courtside or NFL close up, there's some authenticity left in places like Cleveland and Minnesota and Green Bay, even Detroit, even though Detroit's been not great. But so often you see these stadiums that are just sort of lackluster. The stadium itself is great, but the crowds doesn't have that same
San Francisco,
fearsome,
Miami,
right,
Jacksonville.
So often too, especially the NBA is the biggest culprit. You'll see all these bigwig corporate guys in their fancy suits and their leather shoes and their hot women next to them, and they're sitting there on their phones the whole time.
They're to be seen.
And like they're not even watching the game. Like you pan to the sideline, and these guys are sitting there like texting and stuff, and it's like hit the phone out of your hand. That's the thing that's the opposite about Oakland. These people are insane. The crowd is spectacular. It is so authentic. Just like what did Kevin Van Valkenburg said? He said this is like the Star Wars cantina. It's a great tweet by Kevin Van Valkenburg. It's exactly right. Yes. It's like a Halloween party.
Yes.
I mean, you never seen so many grown adults with face paint, and you know me. I don't really get into that kind of stuff, and I was all about it. I think that the insanity that exists in Oakland is tremendous.
The one thing where because at all these other stadiums, you go and you what? You wear the gear. You get the jersey. You get the hat. You're not into any of that stuff. But if I can walk in there in a WWE costume, like the Undertaker. That is Colton Nuanez all day long. All day long in there. And it is exactly that. And did you see right when the game ended, too? John Gruden, handshake Vic Fangio, and then takes off at what I consider to be a dead sprint. Most people would call it a slow jog to the end zone and just high fives and hugs to the black hole. You know what I mean? And again, I mean, if there was ever a better coach as a character to be the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, find him. Find him.
For sure.
I mean, it's John Gruden. That's it. That's all. I do want to give it up to Derek Carr. I have said I like Derek Carr. I think he's a good quarterback. He has dealt with some significant injuries and also, frankly, some bad personnel. I don't know how good a quarterback he is. I'm not sitting here saying, look, this kid's a top 10 quarterback in the league or something like that. But he is a proficient NFL starter, and I think there's a lot of teams that would be happy to have Derek Carr. And if you build around him, he could be successful. 22 of 26 yesterday. I mean, he was on pace. I think he was like 16 of 17 at one point. Had a couple of incompletions late in this game, but he was also outstanding. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Okay, quick break. Come back. Skyline Sports MT going to take us around the Big Sky Conference. What happened over the weekend? We'll take a look at the stats. FCS Top 25 poll, and what teams are making our radar in the Big Sky Conference next.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires. You know, we've been helping keep folks safe on the road around here since 1952. That's why you can save up to $152 on a set of 4 select light truck and SUV tires during our fall tire sale. So swing by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Discount depends on tire size and type. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up,
Quench your thirst with some good old-fashioned water. Town Pump's got Dasani 1-liter bottled water, 2 for $2.50. And in the deli, grab an Everything Bagel, 2 for $5. Town Pump, there's one just down the road from you.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
Mark your calendar for the 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale. The lowest prices of the year on guns, ammunition, and accessories, and massive amounts of ammo to stock up for the entire year. September 13th and 14th in the Lolo Shopping Center parking lot on Highway 93. Tons of ammo, guns, and other items at below-cost blowout prices. September 13th and 14th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday. The 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale at the Lolo Shopping Center, Highway 93.
During International Suicide Prevention Week, September 8th through 15th, River Pines Horse Sanctuary invites the public to Horses for Hope, emotional strength training as a suicide prevention strategy, a well-being journey through the way of the horse. This workshop is an opportunity to learn important suicide prevention concepts through horse grooming, an activity that is known to boost oxytocin levels in the brain, lowering blood pressure, and fostering social connection responses. A limited number of appointments are available. Call 406-304-6433 to schedule yours today.
Are you interested in putting solar panels on your roof? Do you want the latest on Montana's renewable energy policies? The Montana Renewable Energy Association is a leading voice for renewable energy education and advocacy in Montana. From community-based clean energy events to advocating at the Montana legislature, they work to ensure Montana's future is powered by the sun, wind, and earth. Find out more about MREA and join as a member by visiting montanarenewables.org or calling 406-214-9405.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference landed 4 teams in the top 10 of this week's Stats FCS Top 25 poll. Eastern Washington held steady at number 4. UC Davis, despite being pushed significantly by USD, is still at number 5. Weber State beat Cal Poly. They're now at number 6, 4, 5, and 6 for the Big Sky Conference. How about that? Montana State, they also cracked the top 10 at number 10 for the first time in 5 years with a 38-17 win over former number 12 Southeast Missouri State. The Cats were number 10. Montana is now also up 2 spots to number 20 after having been 22nd in the league last year, 61-17 win over UNA.
Montana State was... Start over. Montana State's win was spurred on by a fierce pass rush spearheaded by senior Bryce Dirk. You never know that I wrote this. The Montana Washington transfer notched 3 of Montana State's 6 sacks, turned Big Sky Conference Defensive Player of the Week. Jerry Lou McGee, he was an absolute man in the punt return game, including a 74-yard touchdown, turned Big Sky Special Teams Player of the Week honors.
Billings Central soccer standout Morgan Ferristed notched a hat trick against Hamilton over the weekend, giving her a Montana prep record 102 goals in her decorated career. She surpassed his White Fist Elizabeth Pittman, who had 101. Jr. We were at the show, Coulter. We'll have that forever. No matter whatever comes between us, we were at Gary Clark Jr. and the pouring down rain.
Yeah, might have
Sunday.
hypothermia forever, too.
Tutel Nuanez, we are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. It is time for a look around the Big Sky Conference, what happened this weekend, who won, who lost. You heard a little bit about it in the news. It's brought to us by SkylineSportsMT.com. The game of the weekend, in terms of what, in fact, transpired on the field, probably took place between UC Davis and San Diego. UC Davis, the number 5 team in the nation, held on to that spot, and a team widely regarded as one of the probably 2 best teams in the Big Sky coming into the season, barely held on, a 38-35 win. San Diego appeared to score a touchdown right at the end. The hit right at the goal line jarred the ball free. Question whether the ball had crossed the line before the fumble occurred. Ultimately ruled a fumble and recovery by UC Davis. That call stood, and UC Davis stays, gets their first win of the season. They had a very nice game. I think it was like 19-7 against Cal in the first week.
Sac State, Arizona State for the 19-7.
Oh, you're right.
It was 27-13 though. They were in it. They were winning.
A very good game. In fact, it was 13-all in the second half of that football game. Cal ends up beating UC Davis, but UC Davis holding on against San Diego. They're now 1-1. And they're still the number 5 team in the nation. The biggest domination of the weekend was Portland State, of all teams, who also looked great against Arkansas in their first game. They hammered Simon Fraser, maybe not surprisingly, 70-7, the victory there. But as we said, Big Sky teams occupying the 4th, 5th, and 6th spots nationally in the FCS Stats FCS poll, with Eastern Washington, UC Davis, and Weber State, and then Montana State at number 10. So 4 in the top 10, and the Grizzlies 20. So 5 in the top 20. There haven't been 5 Big Sky Conference teams in the top 20 in a long time. Needless to say, anything of 4 in the top 10. It's a big week right now for the Big Sky Conference, and a lot of respect being given to the Big Sky.
Yeah, I'll do some research, because it actually might be never that there's been 5 teams in the top 20, only because the league was not this 13-team monstrosity that it is now.
Yeah.
It was a 9-team league, so to have 5 out of 9 would be ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So, but even 5 when you have 13 teams is still a good number. You mentioned the UC Davis San Diego game. I think that the 2 things that you got to note, San Diego's been a playoff team the last couple of years, to be sure, but they also are rebuilding a little bit.
And in a zero scholarship situation.
Yeah, I mean, San Diego is a lot like a D3 school in their scholarship model, because San Diego is one of the most expensive and prestigious schools on the West Coast.
Some academic stuff going.
Yeah, so I mean, your guys aren't on academic scholarships, but there's very few guys that are paying $65,000
not on athletic scholarships.
Out pocket. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But there's not. I mean, San Diego is like $65,000 a year. There's not a bunch of dudes playing football at San Diego paying $65,000 out the pocket to go to a private school and play in the Pioneer League. They're recruiting and getting FCS caliber guys, to be sure. And the other thing to remember
the thing is the campus just not nice.
Yeah, right. They had a 21 game winning streak in home openers coming into that game. Mm-hmm. And this is a little bit of a rivalry game, too. I mean, these 2 teams are former D2 rivals. They are both prestigious academic institutions that have played more often than not in the non-conference. So I'm not surprised that San Diego gave Davis a little bit of a run. Other scores from around the Big Sky, I thought that Idaho State had a real struggle putting Western Colorado away. They finally did. They scored 14 points in the fourth quarter to kind of bury Western Colorado, but that was a 24-13 game with about 12 minutes to play, and Idaho State did not look nearly as good as you would have hoped. Matt Struck ended up winning the starting job there over Gunnar Amos at quarterback, and Idaho State, they didn't run the ball with as much authority as maybe you would have wanted, and that's not that surprising considering what they lost up front. So we'll see what Idaho State becomes, but not the domination of a D2 team, especially when you had a bye week 1 that you might have really wanted. I thought Sac State looked really good against Arizona State, defensively especially. I thought Kevin Thompson looked sharp, the quarterback from Sac State. So, we'll see. We'll see where Sac State becomes. They have been good in FBS games throughout the years. Them and Portland State are always pretty good in FBS games, regardless of what their season becomes. And I think a lot of that just shows you how important the culture of winning is compared to just having talent, because those two teams have always had talent. They're in the metropolitan areas that are superior to other Big Sky schools, so they can get some different types of athletes, but they have never been able to really put it together consistently in league play because they have to play teams that do have winning traditions like Montana, Montana State, and Eastern Washington. So we'll see what Sac State becomes, but I thought they looked pretty decent out the gates. Northern Colorado, Washington State were tied 7-7 in the second quarter, and then Washington State just avalanched them. Anthony Gordon looked automatic in the second half. He ended up throwing for 464 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Washington State ran away from Northern Colorado. Eastern Washington, a couple of notes from that game that were striking. Tresante Dorton had 15 catches for 289 yards. So the 289 yards, that breaks Cooper Kupp's single-game record.
Yeah.
That in itself was striking. I mean, Dorton's had a lot of potential. He's been a speed guy that's kind of had to wait his turn, and now it looks like he has a chance to really break out this year. Boy, it kind of made me sad that Cooper Kupp's record got broken. Because when you have a guy that's a peerless talent like Kupp, it just seems like he should just own all the records. Because it's just good for everybody involved. When everybody goes looks at the record books, they're like, oh, Cooper Kupp.
I mean, can we do asterisks versus Lindenwood?
Right. Because Cooper Kupp, his school record was against Northern Colorado, which might be asterisks as well. but I mean, Lindenwood. The other striking part about that game, Eric Berry finishes with 522 yards passing and 566 yards of total offense. The 566 was the 14th best total in Big Sky history, which in itself is remarkable. But I also thought it was incredible that there's been 14 games with more than 566 yards of total offense. That shows you what kind of offensive league the Big Sky's been. Northern Iowa picked up its first of what's probably going to be 2 Missouri Valley wins over the Big Sky. They beat Southern Utah 34-14. They play Idaho State later. I think Northern Iowa is probably going to take care of business. Northern Iowa is good this year, by the way. I watched a little bit of the Southern Utah game. Northern Iowa is tough, and they return good size and strength on both lines. So you mentioned Portland State 70-7 over Simon Fraser. Weber State Cal Poly was a good one. Weber State ended up pulling away late. Jay Hill has proven that he can scheme up against that triple option as well as anybody. Weber always holds the triple option in check. And then the one we were kind of laughing at in the press box, Idaho goes on the road and gets drilled by 100 points at Penn State. They realistically lost 79-7. They come home against the D2 team, Central Washington, that they're supposed to be one of the easy wins on their schedule. And we both know Central Washington is no pushover. And
31-all in the middle of the fourth quarter.
I mean, they get everything they can handle.
Idaho did win the game.
They did win the game 41-31,
Yep.
but things are just they're not where they should be in Moscow, and I don't know when that's going to change.
I mean, I have a guess. I thought the team that was most interesting to me, not most interesting as a team, but I thought the game that was interesting to me in terms of a final score was the Northern Arizona game. Northern Arizona goes and plays at Arizona and scores 41 points against the Wildcats. Look,
caveat though, they were down 51-7.
All right.
They were down 51-7 in the second quarter.
It's a lot.
They gave up 51 points in 20 minutes.
Not good.
They scored 28 points in the second half, so credit to them. And Case Cook is threw for 373 yards, but 51 points in
here's the thing.
First 20,
it's
25
just
minutes.
easy to come out and realize if you get – this is why I think starts the first quarter, the first couple of possessions of an FCS to FBS step-up game are so important for the FCS team. Because it is easy to get out there and all of a sudden go, what are we doing here? This ain't good. Lose confidence, and then you just start to play bad regardless. Like you would be playing a style of football that would lose to like opponents and even opponents worse than you because your head's spinning or your confidence is shot or you're not ready for the moment or whatever it is. That clearly happened, but also Case Cookus is a great stabilizer, and once the game is already clearly out of reach, you go, okay, enough of this. Can we just go play some football, please? And all of a sudden, shockingly, things go better for you. So certainly Arizona would have called the dogs off at some point as well, and probably could have scored more than 65 points had they chosen to do so. Point being, I don't think it's a complete, I don't think it doesn't matter that they ended up with 41 points, because that's a lot of points to have late against, an in-state Pac-12 team that certainly there's plenty of kids playing on Northern Arizona that are sitting there going, I should be at Arizona or Arizona State.
Speaking of Northern Arizona assistant head coach and tight ends coach Robin Pflugrad will join us on the show tomorrow. And the connection there is, well, obviously he's the former head coach at the University of Montana. He also spent a good deal of time at the University of Oregon, so he knows both of these programs pretty darn well. So that'll be a fun interview to catch up with Coach Pflugrad tomorrow, so stay tuned for that.
Very good. Coulter, when you look at the Big Sky Conference just in general here, now not looking at specific games or whatever, is this as good as the Big Sky Conference has been at the top in recent memory? Or are they just...
It remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The whole thing relies on the Montana schools. The Montana schools have been not what they should be for, in the case of Montana State, 4 or 5 years. And in the case of Montana, 10 years. For all of the 90s, it was Montana and everybody else. For a brief moment, Tim Walsh had Portland State there as the number one contender. For a brief moment, Ron McBride had Weber State there as the number one contender. For a brief moment, Mike Kramer had Montana State there as the number one contender. The Big Sky was a one-bid league, basically, when it came to the playoffs. It was Montana. And if any of those other teams were able to sneak up and somehow sneak in, it was a two-bid league. But that was it. And there was really no one else that was ever in the mix. Eastern Washington was a number one contender there for a little while as well. With the demise of the Grizzlies, the rise of Eastern Washington, the leveling out of Montana State, it opened a bunch of doors. Then all of a sudden, 2012, you add all these teams to the league. Well, it's Cal Poly, UC Davis, North Dakota, and Southern Utah. Every single one of those teams has won a Big Sky title since joining the league. Montana has not. That in itself is crazy. But when you have a dynamic and rising star as a head coach in Jay Hill at Weber State, now you have consistency there. Ron McBride had a 2-year span where they were really good. And then they kind of came back down to earth at the tail end of his career, and they were just average again. But Jay Hill's proven that this is a now perennial contender for Weber State. So now you have them solidified. So it's not as if there's just one number one contender to Eastern. Eastern Washington is the one sitting on the throne right now. They've established themselves as the premier program in the Big Sky this decade. But it's not as if Weber State's the only number one contender. When you lure Dan Hawkins back to his alma mater at UC Davis and he gets it rolling right away, now you have a completely different factor that the Big Sky has not seen before until right now, with a premier academic institution located in the heart of California, but also with the distinct advantage of being in a true college town. Nowhere else in California can offer a true college town experience while also having a football program with a ton of tradition before they went Division I. And now you have one of the most dynamic and famous head coaches that has, it's a coaching cradle at UC Davis, but Dan Hawkins is the one that rose to the top level. Now he's back at his alma mater. So now you have two premier contenders to Eastern Washington, and neither of those are the Montana schools. If the Montana schools can fulfill their potential this year and reclaim their rank among the nationally elite, which it looks as if they're at least inching towards that.
It looks as if they're capable of that, whereas before now it looked as if they were not capable of
that. Yes. And so then in that case, then yes, the Cats right now are as a program better than the Grizz. Even when the Cats were and it's so hard to say, but you have to say it because the Grizz haven't made the playoffs in 3 years and the Cats have. Right?
Yes, and have won 3 in a row, head to head. So
there's
no question about that.
And the Cats have won 3 Big Sky titles this decade. The Grizz have won none. The Cats have made the playoffs 6 times this decade. The Grizz have made it 4.
You don't have to make an argument. It's a fact.
So what I'm saying, though, is that's never been the case. Even when Mike Kramer was at Montana State and they beat the Grizz 3 out of 4 years, there was no argument who had the better program. Montana had the best program in the Western United States, maybe one of the 3 best programs in the country with the exception of Georgia Southern and App State at this level. Now, with the Cats having a little bit of advantage there, but the Grizz having so much entrenched tradition and so many resources, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for Montana, in my opinion, with what they have at their disposal. And so when those two teams then can spur each other on, then that leads the way for everybody else. Eastern Washington just approved finally a whole new renovation, a whole new stadium expansion. It remains to be seen if they're going to be able to make it happen, because they've been talking about this Gateway project since 2004. But when the flagships are good, it drives everybody else. And the fact that there's been at least 3 programs that have gotten back to being really good that aren't the Cats and the Grizz. When the Cats and the Grizz reassume their spots at the table, now all of a sudden you have 5 teams that have they have the things you need to be able to entrench yourself as a consistently nationally elite team, with not only the investment in football, but the coaches, the recruiting models, all that stuff. And so it's not quite there yet, but it's on the precipice, and all it has to do with Montana State.
It's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, thank you. Let's look around the Big Sky Conference, brought to you by SkylineSportsMT.com. Just one thing. This is for me, probably not for anybody else. Puts me in a very, very good mood. Shout out to our friend Angela Marshall over at ABC Fox Television, anchor in town, for tweeting this out and putting me in such a good mood. The first winter weather advisory of the season will take place at midnight Wednesday night. Fear not, it's just in the Beartooth Mountains. It's a long way away and very high up. Not here in Missoula, not anywhere in any low country. But it is happening in the state, and I am thrilled. Bring on fall. Coulter, if you got friends coming to town, maybe for a football game, maybe you have in-laws, and maybe you don't like them.
Who does? Have you seen the Bob Green video that went?
I do.
Have you seen the Bob Green video that went viral?
I don't know who Bob Green is, and I have not seen it.
He is the former head coach at Montana Tech.
Oh, yes.
Vietnam War veteran who screams and yells at every possible
thing. I do know
thing.
Bob Green.
Got a lot of mixed feelings. It's like when your mother-in-law drives off a cliff in a Cadillac. Anyways, if you don't like your in-laws and they're coming to town, great place for you to stay.
Yeah, actually, you'd be doing them a very good service. So you keep your distance, but also treat them right. Let them stay at the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel.
Wingate by Wyndham Hotel, located by the Missoula Airport. A great place that offers something for everybody, whether you want to enjoy the awesome water park with the sweet water slide. If you have a family or they have some kids, you got some nieces and nephews you want to take out there, that's great. They also can host parties out there, birthday parties. So if you're in town, you need a place to take the kiddos, go check out the Wingate by Wyndham as well. And they also have terrific business travel rates, large meeting spaces for you and your clients, and one of the best rewards programs you will find anywhere. You got people coming into town, hook them up with the Wingate by Wyndham. Give Kim or Alicia a call, 541-8000. That's 541-8000. Let the Wingate by Wyndham in Missoula make you feel at home even when you're not.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the MyCard app and debit card from Farmer State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. MyCard is available only at Farmer State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmer State Bank, member FDIC.
The Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance is here. The world's best-selling off-road lineup is priced to move with financing as low as 3.99% and rebates up to $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. The best deals of the year are happening now. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $3,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Kurtz Polaris is now showcasing all of the new 2020 Polaris off-road vehicles. To be the first to get a great deal on brand new state-of-the-art Polaris vehicles at Kurtz Polaris. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Rebates valid in U.S. through 9/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Financing offer valid on 2015s through 2020s. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to BorgenProject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication. People hate and say we changing, look, we made it.
Big week coming up this week. Say coming up, I mean, we're in it. It is Tuesday. I understand. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at KurtzPolaris.com. You can find us on the World Wide Web, 1029ESPN.com. You can listen live there if you'd like to on the stream. If you missed anything in the show, you can also listen on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Search Tutel Nuanez, TOOTELL, KZNALCTUEZ. Right? Did I get your last name right? Very odd. Very odd last name. I never thought I would have a co-host or even somebody that I knew who would have a rarer last name in terms of the number of people on earth that have it than the one that I've got. But I think you've got me beat.
Oh, absolutely. Well, because Nunez is one of the most common names on planet Earth. But whatever happened with, I mean,
you had a blind ancestor
whoever comes where, and when you get to America, whatever happens, somehow something extra gets added or something gets dropped off or whatever. And that happened. I mean, I have done all sorts of research on the internet, and I have never been able to find more than about 25 people with the actual last name of Nuanez.
Anyway, it's available on the podcast. Tutel and Nuanez, very unique. You're not going to hear that combo ever again. The podcast brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Coulter, just quickly update. We mentioned this earlier, but Robin Pflugrad tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Aaron Parchette also going to be here from the Montana Brewers Association. Big Brew Fest on Saturday here in town. So we'll have that for you. Also, Jake Elliott, the head coach of the Western Illinois Leathernecks, going to join us on Thursday. So look forward to having him in here as well. And Tyson Alger, who is the beat writer for the Oregon Ducks from The Athletic. He is the subject of this week's ESPN Roundtable. That'll be on at noon tomorrow, and then again at 5 o'clock on Thursday. So we'll get you all set for what's going on in the world of Oregon football from somebody who is in and around the program quite a lot. In fact, been between the Oregonian and the Athletic, been covering Oregon since 2014 when Marcus Mariota was doing his thing. Has Tyson been doing it? So appreciate having him on. And also Thursday, I want to remind everybody, it's the last stop on the Tutel Nuanez summer tour. The Press Box, boys and girls. We're headed to the Press Box. Going down there to the phenomenal sports bar down by the walking bridge right across from the university and the official fan headquarters of Grizzly Athletics. In fact, at the Press Box. So we're going to be down there 4 to 6 Thursday afternoon. We're going to pull one more name out of the box for tickets, which we have in hand. In hand. We'll have them on site for the Grizzly Oregon Duck football game coming up Saturday. So come down, hang out with us have some Widmer Hefeweizen with us down there, and enjoy some time at the press box with Tutel Nuanez Thursday afternoon from 4 to 6. Speaking of that Oregon football game, Coulter.
Jared Elliott, not Jake Elliott. Just had to correct you there on the Western Illinois head coach.
Thank you. It's funny because I didn't miss, just don't know.
It's so funny when you have the crossovers sometimes with teams that aren't in a league.
He's
that we
not
cover.
a kicker for the Eagles.
He's not, no. It's just it's funny how sometimes some of these home and homes work, especially when there's crossovers with both Montana schools. This will be the third time Jared Elliott's been on our show.
Yeah.
And he might not ever be on it again unless
not when I'm calling him Jake. He's not coming back.
But it's just interesting that this is only his second year as the head coach, but he played both Montana schools last year, and then he plays Montana State again this year, and I think the Grizz play them again next year too. So the home and home crossovers are interesting.
That's the way it goes. The Oregon Grizzly game. We talked about the spread in this game. 36 points right now. You and I are both on Oregon to give the points, take the Ducks. How many points do you think Oregon will score in this game, and how many points do you think would be good for Montana if Oregon scored in this game?
Gosh, I hate this game. Oregon can score as many points as they want in this game.
Not sure about it. I'm not sure about that.
How many possessions is Oregon going to have?
Probably 16.
Oregon's going to score
15?
on 75% of their possessions.
Okay.
70 to 75% of their possessions.
Okay.
So if Montana limits the possessions, then Oregon's going to score 49. And if Montana doesn't limit possessions or turns the ball over, I don't know. To me, because of Oregon's prowess on the offensive line and the fact that they have an absolute stud playing quarterback, this could be as lopsided as Montana at Washington, if not more, because I just think that Oregon has a higher ability to score.
If Montana held Oregon to under 50, I think that would be a remarkable feather in the cap. I also think that, as perhaps was evidenced in the Northern Arizona football game, there's a difference between limiting a team in some way and a team limiting itself in some way.
True.
And so, again,
and how true is Montana to itself? Because if
Yeah.
Montana plays its typical style of a really aggressive defense, that could go two ways. You could confuse Oregon and maybe get them out of some drives, and maybe they're not going to score on 70% of the possessions. Or if Justin Herbert figures out the defense pretty quick, it could actually cater to you giving up way more points.
Mm-hmm.
Or you mentioned like sometimes the way you can play defense, like the Cats when they went to Washington State a couple years ago, and Luke Falk was the quarterback. They were just bailing. I mean, they were rushing 2, 3. They were dropping 8. And they lost 31-0, but the 31-0 was lopsided, right? Because they mitigated the possession game. I mean, Luke Falk completed like 23 straight passes in the first half, but they were only up 14-0 because of the way the possession count worked, right? Montana State did a little bit of the similar thing in Texas Tech to keep them at 45. But is it actually a good defensive performance? It's pretty good, but it's, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you're mitigating your stuff to stop the bleeding.
But I also think too that there's certain, I don't know, benchmarks that you can look for in a game like this. Tackling, right? As big and as strong as a guy is, there's no wide receiver, there's no tight end, there's no even running back on Oregon that Dante Olson or any other guy can't bring down if you can get to him. There's plenty of guys that you can't catch if they get you wrong. I get that. Like, if a guy's faster, he's just faster. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But
that's also the beauty of college football, is that these are all kids.
That's right. Like, you can go up and wrap your arms around a guy and bring him to the ground, even if he's twice your size. It's possible. Okay, it's not a problem. But it's easy also to kind of not quite make it there, or maybe, whatever, be sound in what you do and see how it goes. That's what I think. And we'll pay attention and see if, Montana's able to do that. I think a sub 50 would be a tremendously optimistic defensive performance, but also not out of the realm of possibility. Boys and girls, thanks for being with us. 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. We will be back with you tomorrow. Going to have some great interviews for you, some fun times, and even some ways. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening. We'll see you then. Good night.
Alpine Touch has been part of the fabric of Montana for more than 60 years. Decades ago, Russell Street started selling his touch of magic in whitefish. Years later, Alpine Touch's all-purpose seasoning remains a favorite. It's tailgating season, and there's no better way to spice up your grill before a Grizz game than with Alpine Touch. Go to alpinetouch.com now and use the checkout code ESPN10 for a 10% discount on your order. Alpine Touch is here to keep your mouth watering all football season. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice. Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain. They still need to get to work. They need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
The big skies are open. Go wild with Opportunity Reward Checking. Go ahead, jump, dance, shout. Opportunity Reward Checking will make you do that. Go wild when you get your 1% cash back on qualified debit card purchases. It all starts with an Opportunity Reward Checking account from Opportunity Bank. Visit a branch today to get started. Then go wild and spend your 1% cash back however you want. Go wild with Reward Checking from Opportunity Bank. Some restrictions may apply. Member FDIC.
Have you been hurt or disabled?